it lies within them. How bad do you want it? Because these things, it's tough. It's competitive. So to get a U.S. scholarship, what I was dealing with, it's competitive out there. To be a pro hockey player is extremely competitive. It's a worldwide market that teams and people are looking at. So how competitive, how bad do you want it? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to put forward? What kind of effort are you willing to put forth to try to achieve those things? And it's critical. It's critical that the most successful ones, or just the successful ones, have that. They have that, like I said, the intrinsic competitiveness, the fire inside to be the best they can be. And hopefully they lean on people like me and you and other coaches and other resources to help them achieve that.
You are listening to Brian Wiseman, the assistant coach of the Edmonton Oilers, and this is the Up My Hockey Podcast with Jason Podollan. Just watch me now. Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podollan, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podollan, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hey there, hi there. Welcome back to the Up My Hockey Podcast with Jason Podollan. This is episode 76, and today we are going to be chatting with Brian Wiseman. Brian Wiseman is a name you may know, you may not know. He was a very decorated player back in the 90s, more in the minor leagues than the NHL, as he only played 3 games in the NHL with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But he did come out of Michigan, University of Michigan, where he was a heck of a hockey player there for the 4 years he stayed, and then he was a prolific scorer in the minor leagues, in both the AHL and the IHL, where he ended up winning a scoring title and an MVP award in the IHL the year his Houston Aeros, led by Dave Tippett, won the Turner Cup Championship. So Brian had a very great career in his own. He did follow Dave Tippett to the Edmonton Oilers, where he is now the assistant coach, working with the forwards, also responsible for faceoffs, and is also responsible for the development of some of the younger players on the team. So absolute pleasure to have Brian on. Brian was a line mate of mine for the playoffs the year I got traded to Toronto. So I got traded to Toronto. Things didn't go quite as awesomely as I would have liked with the big club. So when we were out of the playoffs with the Maple Leafs, they asked me to go down. I shouldn't say asked. They told me to go down to St. John's and play with the Baby Leafs there for the Calder Cup playoffs. And I was fortunate enough to be placed on a line with Brian. Wisey is a heck of a player, as I said earlier. Great vision on the ice, really understood the game, high hockey IQ, and loved to distribute the puck. So as a shooter, it was a lot of fun to play with him. Unfortunately, Wisey got a real bad concussion that year in the playoffs and was forced to miss the second half of the playoffs, which definitely hurt our chances. We ended up losing to Hamilton in 7 games that year. But yeah, this is a great conversation with Brian. Anytime you have a chance to talk with somebody, from the NHL, but from the NHL on a team that has arguably the 2 best hockey players in the world on it, how can you not be excited about a conversation like that? So definitely talk some Connor McDavid. We definitely talk some Leon Draisaitl. We talk about some of my favorite topics like culture, like intangibles, like self-assessment, preparedness, some amazingly common themes that these coaches want to discuss and look forward to discussing, because it really speaks to how to be great. And you know that this is the whole focus of this, is like, how do you be your best as a hockey player? How do you be your best as a coach? How do you get to the places you want to get to and reach the goals that you want to achieve? And you can pick up something from every one of these podcast episodes. And this is not a stranger to that, because Brian drops a lot of truth bombs here. He drops a lot of insights and a lot of gems along the way. So I think you're going to really enjoy this hour conversation with Brian Wiseman. So let's listen to the conversation with assistant coach of the Edmonton Oilers, Brian Wiseman. Well, here we are. I do the intro prior, Wisey, but we have on the assistant coach of the Edmonton Oilers, Brian Wiseman, and a long, many moons ago was a center, my center for a brief moment in time for the St. John's Leafs. So welcome to the podcast, Wisey.
No, thanks for having me, Jace. That's good. It's great to reconnect with you after so many years.
No kidding, right? My goodness, we've had a common denominator there in Dave Oliver. So I know he was also a line mate of yours.
Yeah,
maybe a little more successful line mate. You guys won a championship together, but he's kind of kept me in the loop with you and what you've been up to, and obviously got us connected for this interview. So great to see both you guys doing so well in the NHL. I wanted to ask you a little bit just about your own career, because we met there when you were in St. John's. You were in St. John's for 1 year. Ended up being hurt, I think, that playoffs, if I'm correct. And I think that was kind of our demise. Didn't you went down with a concussion, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't make it through the playoff series there. Maybe our semifinal, whatever it was, with concussions, and that kind of lingered on the next year, which ultimately probably was the end of my career. Just not recovering from those types of injuries. Become more common the following year.
I know, right? What would you like looking back on that now, and what we all know now? Like, we don't know what we don't know at the time. Did you have symptoms and kept playing? Like, did you come back too early, or what would you have done different?
Not the year that you and I played together necessarily, because they held me out the rest of the playoffs after I got knocked out pretty good in the one series. The following year, definitely. I was, feeling some things, and I ignored them. I didn't report them for a number of reasons. I'm a competitor. I wanted to play hockey. I was chosen, as a leader on the team, and I wanted to lead. And so I wanted to be a part of it. And looking back, that was the wrong decision, because I certainly needed more time to heal as some of these injuries kept reoccurring.
It's the toughest thing as an athlete, isn't it? And I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, I think the protocols now and not allowing the athlete really to be involved in the decision at all is the best way to do it. Because, back when I was doing it, when you were doing it, it was like, do you have a headache? And you would answer yes or no, or whatever the case may be. And you could answer that however you wanted to, because with these concussions, you never know. There was no baseline test. There was nothing else, right? And you wanted to be in the lineup. You were protecting a job. You wanted to play, you're a competitor, and so you did whatever you thought was best. No one's looking to the future, but now with taking it out of the athlete's hands, I think that's probably best for everyone, don't you think?
I think it is. I think obviously the research and the information that is out there now, that all our medical trainers and doctors have, it should lie within them. Obviously, there's some communication with the athlete and the doctors and the trainers, but I think in the end, the information that's been collected over years, the protocols in place, I think have to be respected.
Yeah, and game's definitely different, that's for sure. But you had a hell of a career. I want to talk about Connor and ask you questions about Leon, and obviously what you're doing right now, but I don't want to disregard an amazing career in and of your own right. You're a hell of a player. Let's start back at University of Michigan there. For those of you who don't know, Wisey was an undersized forward at the time, and maybe that's a nice way to put it, a short forward, 5'7" or 5'8". I'm not sure exactly how tall you were, but a hell of a playmaker and a hell of a player, just not a large player. And it was at a time where everyone wanted big. So was that kind of part of your decision to go to the college route at that point, or did OHL, was ever that a part of your discussion?
Yeah, not a whole lot. Like, certainly, I had a value placed on education, and the easiest way at that time was to go the U.S. college route, as far as if you could attain a scholarship, right? And so I had some opportunities in the OHL. Was drafted there, and I guess courted there. But in my mind, I didn't foresee me having this long, drawn-out professional hockey career, just with who I was as a hockey player, or I thought the state of the game. And so I thought the best avenue for me would be to go to the U.S. and get a degree, get an education, and play and try to maximize the hockey part of it. And I did that in some degree.
Yeah, darn straight you did. You guys had great teams there, and you were productive from the moment you walked in to university there. And I think that's where you and Ollie first started playing together, if I'm not correct, right?
We did. We came in the same year. We were roommates and classmates, and right from the get-go, essentially probably line mates for the majority of our 4 years. I was been fortunate to play with a lot of good players, Jace, as you that one year in St. John's, and amongst others in my professional career, but Ollie specifically in college. We had a connection. We had a real sense of where each other is on the ice and what each other are going to do. So we had a real strong connection that lasted for a long time in many games and lots of great victories.
Yeah, you did. And you won a championship there in the I together. I believe he came back that last season, right, and helped you guys win. And that was the year you won the MVP in the IHL that year.
We did. We had a great year. It was in Houston. We had another teammate of ours, Cam Stewart, who was reunited, a college teammate that was reunited with. There were 3 of us, and we had a tremendous team in Houston, led by Dave Tippett, who's the head coach here in Edmonton. But our team was, as you know, the successful teams and the championship teams, there's always a degree, potentially 1 or 2 degrees of what makes that team get to the top. We certainly had talent. We had a coach. We had talent. We had multiple players at positions that were really, really good and effective. But we were a close team. We were a band of brothers. We stuck together on and off the ice. And I really think that took us through some hard times, and really made a long season so enjoyable. We enjoyed being around the rink with each other. We enjoyed being on the road with each other. We enjoyed working hard for one another. We kept each other kind of accountable in different situations of the year. It was a special group, and we're fortunate that we were able to end it in the right way with the win.
Yeah, I don't think it matters what league you're in. I mean, the story about championship successes and sometimes even the bridesmaid, to be honest, to get to the final and to get there. I mean, things got to go right, and maybe it always doesn't go your way right to the end, but generally the theme is the same, and there's a togetherness and there's a family kind of camaraderie feeling to it. And I've had the discussion on this podcast before, and it's like, which boils down to the word the culture word, right? That everyone's trying to find and what that means and what it is. And one of the elements seems to be a togetherness. In your level at the national now, with the way the game is and with COVID and with what all these things that are happening and the social habits of players that are different than when we were around, like how does that unity happen away from the rink? Does it, or is there just a different way to do it?
No, it certainly does. Without question. And I believe we have a unique group here in Edmonton, a fairly young group for the most part, but a group the core group has been around together for an awful long time. And certainly some special players in that group. Our coach, Dave Tippett here, has a great feel for what our team needs to pull back, to push in different situations. I think our players respect that and respond to that. So it's an all-encompassing answer. I think that, you have to have the right people in the locker room that are motivated for a common goal, and you need the proper leadership, and we certainly have the proper leadership here in Edmonton.
With today's, and this is just me being a player and a more question from a player perspective. I remember like the road trips were fun back in the day, because that was when, you have your single guys and your young guys that are doing whatever they do at home, and the family guys are family guys, and you go on the road and everyone's got to go to dinner or everyone's got to go to lunch. So like everyone that was more the place to bond. In this day and age with cell phones and how famous really everyone is that, can you go out for just beers anymore? Like, do guys do that, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it certainly is different, the landscape in terms of what you described. I'm sure our guys still get together, enjoy each other's company in different settings. But you're right. It's that's part of, the camaraderie of some of the great memories that we all have when we played, right? Those times together, bonding, at a restaurant, on the road, after games, in the locker room, or wherever that may take you. So I think there's just a little different awareness of it now. In today's era. But nevertheless, it's important that the guys respect each other, get along with each other, and work hard for one another.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned you got a special group there. I want to talk about Tip though for a little bit, and even like back to you, because you guys, you and Ollie, there's a history there, and I'm all about relationships, because I think that was one thing, not that I missed. I didn't miss it because I felt that was really important, especially with my teammates. But the relationship between players and coaches, sometimes I didn't do a great job with. Meaning trying to cultivate it or understand what they wanted from me, or whatever the case may be, right? You won a championship with Dave Tippett. And I know Tip and Ollie are still close, and I think that happens again. Like we talk about families, we talk about championship teams, we talk about, going to war for each other. There's a respect and a trust factor there. Is that how, because I know when Tip came to Edmonton, like that's where you left Michigan, you came with him. Was that part of like your guys' history and you ending up in Edmonton?
No question. Certainly. It took us back to our time and our relationship that was built in Houston back in the late 90s. I played for Tip for 2 years. So it started there. A number of years later, I joined his staff in Dallas once my playing career was done as a video coach back in maybe 2002, I think it was. And then we kept in touch throughout. Lots of, visits, and especially when I was a college coach at Michigan, I'd go to his training camps when he was in Arizona and different things. But we connected many times through the hockey season in the off season. And that's part of what you talked about, that special year in Houston and the culture that he formed there. There was a respect for our coach, and there was mutual respect from coach to player, and strong relationships and strong bonds that were developed there that still are maintained now. And it would go across lots of coaches lots of players from that team are in coaching now. And probably a lot of us respected the heck out of Dave Tippett and thought that would be maybe a future career path for us after having a couple of years with him.
Take a short break here, as always, just to say thank you to you, the listener, you who choose to download and to watch and to comment. Love everyone who is a fan of this podcast. I really appreciate your support, as it allows me to keep doing what I'm doing, because it motivates me to keep doing what I'm doing. I, of course, love the conversations myself. I really do get inspired by having the conversations with these players, but listening to the impact that it has on the conversations and the car rides that it allows moms and players to have, and dads and players to have, to have discussions around dining room tables about how some of this stuff applies to you as an athlete and to your family. It really motivates me to keep pushing out the episodes. So thanks so much for doing what you do. As always, I appreciate any review that you may give, any shout out on social media. Anytime you talk about it with one of your friends or one of your family members, I do appreciate it, as that is the best way to spread this podcast and get it into more people's audio devices. So thank you again. Keep the reviews coming. And now back to the episode with Brian Wiseman. What a great, compliment, really, at the end of the day, right? Like that. A coaching position, which you're in now, it really can be inspiring, right? Not only to the group that's playing for them, but even like from a mentorship role of like, this might be something that I want to do. I want to be a leader of men in some capacity, right? When Dave called you there, like, did you know as a player, like, did you have your eye on that at the time? Like, this might be something that I would want to be on a bench one day?
I think so. I think it was always in the back of my mind, even going through college. I went through it. I got a degree in education. So I thought during the time, I stayed in hockey, maybe coaching would be a platform for me to use that degree, the teacher's degree. And as I made my way through hockey, I tried to take notice of different styles and different approaches some different coaches had with the way their teams played, or specifically how coaches coach my team. For example, our coach out in St. John's, Mark Hunter. I love Mark Hunter. I thought he was a tremendous coach. He much different than Dave Tippett, but both very successful in their ways. And so you take a little bit from all the people that you've been exposed to and around, and try to formulate maybe a little bit of who you are and what you want to be as a coach. And so I've been fortunate around tremendous mentors of mine that have been in hockey that I've taken a whole lot from. But it's a great profession. It's to be able to stay in the game has been certainly blessed me. It's allowed me to have different places and stops along the way, from playing now to coaching, family situation, some different cities we've lived in and moved to and from. So it's provided me a tremendous life.
Yeah. Hockey's a great vehicle for that. You meet a lot of great people, and it's great 100%. To be able to evolve, even like yourself. You're talking about as a person, essentially, right, within the game from different aspects, being a player and growing into the leadership of leading a team and learning from others in a different way, right? Yeah, as players, we were trying to pick up things from each other and learn from each other, and now you're in the coaching aspect doing that as well. Never heard a bad thing about Dave Tippett from anyone. It's one of those people that anyone who seems to have crossed his path always has a genuinely positive experience with him, which when you're dealing with 20 players on a team, or 24 in your scenario, you know how hard that is to do, right? Somebody's usually mad at the end of the day, but seems like Dave is, Tip has been able to. I would probably guess integrity is the strongest word, right? If you're keeping things above board, and if you're honest, and if you're sincere, and your integrity's there, is really not much to be mad at the end of the day as a player.
No, that's the word. You hit it right on the head, Jace. Everything he does is with integrity, with purpose, mindful of the impact it may have of the team or individuals. The one thing I always say, when people ask me about Dave, is everything he does is without ego, and so you get exactly who he is and why he makes decisions, and the calls he makes is all about the betterment of the group and nothing to do with him. And sometimes that's not always the case.
Yeah,
it's easier said than done, right? Situations.
Yeah. One thing that has come up before, and I've noticed sometimes, I don't think it's a true parallel all the time, but that the team can sometimes take pieces of that coach's personality. Like the energy that the coach has. Sometimes, like a team will inherit that. With this current group, is there any traits that you think the team is picking up from Tip?
Yeah, it's we have a few new pieces this year that we're only 20 games in, so we'll see how it all develops. But one that I think that would stick out to me is the calmness he has, the preparedness that he has going into every game. Certainly has an effect on our group and the way they probably feel confident going into games, that we are prepared for our opponents. We understand what our game should be and what it should look like, and some different modifications we make to it from time to time. I think there's a strong understanding of that from our group, and that comes certainly from our head coach.
It's a great answer, and you hit a point. I mean, I don't know, you probably don't know exactly what I'm doing now, but I'm helping teams and players really be their best in whatever capacity that might be. And sometimes it's the stuff away from the rink that actually helps you be better at the rink. And I've noticed that in this day and age, that it's really like you're looking for percentages, right? Like percentage changes can make big changes. And you mentioned the word preparedness and how that's connected to confidence. Could you maybe, like, just for some of the younger players that are listening, like, that's one of the things that I preach is, like, when you are prepared, you feel more confident. Everyone, like that C word of confidence, everyone wants confidence. And I believe preparation is one of the ways to get it, to manufacture it. Can you talk about that maybe as a player or now as a coach, what that means, being prepared?
Yeah, no question. I think it's a critical part of success in anything we do. The discipline to do that, to be prepared, to understand what being prepared is, and what that can then develop. You mentioned confidence. I wholeheartedly believe that's without doubt one of the major attributes of someone being able to develop confidence is understanding that the work they put in, the preparation they've put in, the focus and attention they've put forth, they understand. And then you have a sense of confidence going into different situations. So as a player, I tried to be prepared as I could to understand the type of game I needed to play. at different situations or different opponents, where my game needs to grow. So I think self-assessment is a big part of that as well, in the reflecting of one, where your game's at and some different things that you could change and alter along the way to for improvement. And that's part of the preparation, I think, as well, just a self-recognition. But to your point of the direct link between being prepared and the confidence that can grow from that, I certainly believe in. And we talk about being prepared, often in college. We did it a lot. When I was assistant at University of Michigan, our head coach certainly talked about being prepared, because of the many things that you had in your life, whether it was the social aspect, the educational part, the downtime, the different stresses, the different people, not necessarily people, the different things that may pull you in some different directions, and understanding how to balance all that out, how to manage all that, and then how to, when we're at the rink, be focused and present during that time. I know it's a long-winded answer, but I do agree that being prepared can go in a bunch of different areas in one's life, and the discipline with sticking to that. And I certainly confidence can grow from that.
Yeah, and listen to you talk there, and maybe that is what you do now. Actually, maybe we'll get into that next. Maybe like your role as the assistant coach, and how you facilitate success amongst your group. But I imagine that part of it is understanding the personalities that you're dealing with. And I know that maybe some coaches that were ahead of their time back when we played were attuned to that, but it was a very one voice fits all approach at most places that we played. And I think that there's an understanding now that we can't treat everybody the same because everybody is different. And we talk about preparation, like you just said there. Not everybody's going to be Rob Brindamore or Sidney Crosby or whoever, right? Like we might have this idea of this model of example model of like how to be a pro, but not everybody can fit into that mold to be their best, is what I mean by that, right? Like some guys who are at the gym all day or at the rink all day, they're just going to be burnt out and they're not going to be great. So being consciously competent is one term that I like to use, is like having that self-assessment that term you said there, of knowing, how do I be great? How am I my best? And how do I help this team be successful? At your level, have most guys figured it out, do you think? Or is guys still trying to figure out where that lies for them?
Yeah, I think it's a moving target, especially as young guys trying to establish themselves in pro hockey or at every level, to develop that. But part of it is, like you said, was that as you prepare and go along, things may change, and one shoe doesn't fit all. One approach does not fit everybody or work for everybody. And to understand that as an individual, what you need as an athlete, may be much different than the guy sitting next to you in the locker room. And that's all right. That is okay, as long as you are working towards that. And it's you might have some crossover things that parallel and then go well together with somebody else and different things. But the bottom line I believe, is the intrinsic competitiveness in oneself to be the best they can. And then there's tools and resources out there to help you accomplish that, right?
Oh, I love that answer.
Someone like yourself, someone like yourself, of what you provide to some of these young athletes. So to understand yourself, to understand what you need to continue to evolve and improve, might be much different than somebody else, but you have a real understanding of you and maybe your needs, and then reaching out to the resources. And an assistant coach is a resource. Yeah. A trainer is a resource. Sports, medical professional, sports psychologist is a resource. The strength guy is a resource. The nutritionist is there's lots of, the video that is available to us now is resources. The internet are resources, people like you. So understand what is available and what may help you, I think is part of it. And I think that's ever evolving.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to underline that for everyone listening, and just put my own spin on it, because you said, like, as long as they're working towards something, and I think that's the thing. Like, doing nothing and just showing up, right, and waiting for the coach to tell you to do something, and then going home when they stop telling you to do something, like, that's not being actively involved, not only in your development, but in your success or in your team's success, right? So how you fit into that and how you continue to grow as an athlete, whether you're at the pro level or at the junior level or at the minor hockey level, I think that accountability on that player, that sooner they understand that and really dive into, hey, how do I fit into this ecosystem, and how am I going to benefit from where I'm at? That's on the athlete. I mean, you, like I said, you're definitely there. I shouldn't say what you do, but I know you're there for support. You have to be, right? But you can't go out and be building bridges all over the place to all these guys to make sure they come to you, right? Like, there's got to be some accountability to the player to say, hey, Wisey, man, like, what do you see? Like, what can we do here after practice, or whatever the case may be?
100%. And that's part of our role as assistant coach. Certainly my role is to ask those questions of the guys, to develop a bond and a trust in my brief 2.5 years here, for those situations that we're here to make them better. We're here to help them have success, and whatever success means to that individual, in the big picture of our team success, obviously. But even take it back even younger, when I was working in college, and I was talking to young kids and junior hockey players or youth hockey players, and they aspired to go to college, or they aspired to be pro hockey players. Just like just to echo what you said, it lies within them. How bad do you want it? Because these things, it's tough. It's competitive. So to get a U.S. scholarship, what I was dealing with, it's competitive out there. To be a pro hockey player is extremely competitive. It's a worldwide market that teams and people are looking at. So how competitive, how bad do you want it? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to put forth? What kind of effort are you willing to put forth to try to achieve those things? Mm-hmm. And it's critical. It's critical that the most successful ones, or just the successful ones, have that. They have that, like I said, the intrinsic competitiveness, the fire inside to be the best they can be. And hopefully they lean on people like me and you and other coaches and other resources to help them achieve that.
Yeah. I mean, it's, the hard work, it almost goes without saying anymore. I mean, you have to work hard. The funnel's too tight not to work. Like, you have to work, but it's like, where else can you get that edge? And I think your intention, or your deliberateness, or whatever word you want to use with that, like, how does this even, like, break it down to a drill? How does this drill apply to me? And how can I get better within the confines of this drill? Like, I think when athletes start getting like that, that's kind of my definition of professionalism. Like, when that's the undercurrent of what's going on. And which brings me to the point of, like, me hearing about Connor McDavid working on his one-timer. I actually use that as an example with this junior team that I'm working. Great team, bunch of great kids, doing a good job and being successful, but not maybe seeing, like, the attention to individual development that could be there, right? Like, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
100%.
Doing it, but not really doing it. And I don't know Connor McDavid, and I don't know how true that story is, but, like, to hearing that the best player in the world needs to improve his one-timer, like, it's kind of laughable. I mean, to some people, right? That he would be out there banging one-timers, right? But, like, if that is true, like, my God, what an example, right? He is legitimately probably one of the best players to ever wear skates, and he thinks he needs to improve his shot, right? What does that say to the 17-year-old, a junior who wants to go play for a D1 school? Like, you should probably be working on something right now.
Right. And it is true, just to make that clear. And that's not the only thing he works at. He comes to work every day. He's extremely competitive, highly motivated. But yeah, you'll see him out with our goalie coach before practice, because the goalie's got a drill of, east-west seam plays on, simulating a power play, and it's one-timers, maybe a team that we may be facing. Connor's out there hitting one-timers because that's an area of focus that he would like to see his game improve. A year ago, take it after my first year here, so 2 seasons ago, he goes in the off season and hires a face-off instructor to go over every single one of his faceoffs through the year and put time in the summer to be a better faceoff man. He's seeing results from that. And that's part of one of my duties here is face-offs here within our structure here in our coaching staff. So there's the best in the world who just came off an MVP year that year, I believe, looking at areas of his game that he can improve on, that he could expand his game, that he could be more dominant in. And it's impressive.
Just take another short break here with my conversation with Brian to remind you that there are ways to follow me. This episode that you are listening to now on whatever device, maybe you are watching it on YouTube, but the episode is available on YouTube. So I do have a podcast channel there, Up My Hockey with Jason Podollan. Not only does it have my podcast episodes, it also has the podcast highlights. There's also lessons from the pros, which are video clips that apply to how to be your best. There's also some tidbits from me and some of the mindset coaching that I do. So if you want to follow me on YouTube, you can definitely do that and watch this episode. You can also join my parent group if you are a hockey parent on Up My Hockey. On Facebook, there are currently over 1,500 families from across North America that are part of the community. It is an amazingly supportive community. We talk about the good, we talk about the bad, but all in a supportive approach. And we just help navigate the space of what is amateur hockey and trying to make dreams come true and get to junior teams and get to universities and get scholarships and for some, make to the NHL. So that's what that group is all about. In this episode of this podcast, you will hear that there are questions being asked to Brian Wiseman from that group. So I often pull the group, get them to ask questions they would ask if they were in front of my guests, and sometimes I do ask questions. So today you're going to hear from some of the members of the group. I'm also on Instagram at Jason Podollan. So there's 3 great ways to follow me. Also the website, upmyhockey.com. So lots of ways to follow me on social and different ways to consume the content you are hearing there. Are hearing now. So now back to the episode with Brian Wiseman. Yeah, I mean, what an example. I mean, for everyone else. I mean, how does, I won't throw names, but how does whoever on the Edmonton Oilers feel like they can't be working on something when they're seeing the guy with the C on who's obviously an elite player doing this extra stuff that has to help the team culture.
Definitely, as you know, it's contagious, some of those behaviors within a team structure, right? If your best players are working the hardest, usually good things happen. And he's obviously one of the best players in the game, if not the world. And there's probably not one that works harder at his game.
That's impressive. So, I mean, you talk to enough coaches and that really seems to be one of the underlying themes of them to be successful is if my best players are my hardest workers or my best example of the things that I want this team to encompass, we're going to be okay. Like when the top guys, they get way too much rope and they can play the game a different way, yet you're trying to manage, the bottom 6 and have them do these things. Like it becomes pretty hard, right, for everyone to believe in a system. So you think with Connor and Leon's a little bit different of a player. He seems his personality is a little different too. Do those guys kind of operate the same way, or are they different when it comes to their approach to the game?
No, their approach is very similar. They're extremely competitive and they're hardworking at their craft. They want to be the best they can certainly be. They push each other internally within our team. Others like Darnell Nurse is a tremendous worker. Sets a great example for our young players, and specifically our young defense. And there's others, Duncan Keith comes in this year as a veteran defenseman, Stanley Cup champion, potential Hall of Famer. Like the experience he can impose on our locker room of the things that he's been through. So to your point, originally in a perfect world, your best players, if they're your hardest workers, it's probably easier to get the group together and herd them in the right direction, right? And it's usually self-done within the locker. kind of self-patrolled, right?
Yeah.
If it's not, then it's more challenging, and that's where really effective coaches can come in and certainly make a difference in some different situations like that.
Since we're on Connor, I had to ask because it was all the buzz of social media there a week, and I know that the way social media works now, it's a story one day and it's gone the next. So it's about 6 days old now, and maybe you've already talked about it, but Tortorella and his soundbite with and I personally think it was a little bit misconstrued. I think it got blown up a little bit, but he said that Connor needs to change his game in the playoffs, and I probably even paraphrased that wrong because it's picking on Torts, but. I think he maybe had a bit of a point there, but what is your thoughts on that comment and how did you digest that? And was it water off a duck's back for Connor? Or does it, how did that impact anything?
Yeah, I didn't hear John speak directly to that. Obviously, I heard some people paraphrasing, some just talking amongst here. I couldn't tell you if it affected Connor one way or the other. But I can tell you, from my experience with Connor McDavid, he cares. He cares an awful lot about winning. He's motivated and driven to be a winner, not just be an individual great player. He wants to be a champion. He wants to win this cup. And so the motivation, the commitment for him and his focus of doing that certainly is there and evident in every day, just about every time he takes the ice. And so I believe you can win with people like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I've seen his game evolve, and obviously you have in the last 2.5 years too. I mean, he's the most dynamic player there is in the league. I mean, for one, we all see the highlight reel goals, but I like watching the nuances and the intangibles and the small area stuff that he's doing. He seems to be much more engaged in his own end. He's on the defensive side of the puck more than I've seen him in the past. He's battling a little harder in those areas, I think. So I don't know. I mean, to me, that's maybe what Torts was saying, maybe not. Like maybe in years past, there's kind of more of too much of an offensive focus. But like I see a really complete player in Connor McDavid now, and I think that's a testament to what you're saying there, that he wants to win.
He certainly does, and you're bang on. And as we know, majority of all championship teams across all sports can't rely on one individual or two individuals. It's got to be a collective effort. He leads the charge for our team, and lots of guys are on board. No question. You've seen that evolve from the time that I've been here, certainly.
In the success of this season, which you guys are definitely having, and your team looks as solid as it's been, as far as being ready to win, in my opinion. Some of the changes there that Kenny did over the off season, seems like you have more depth than you've had before. I mean, talking about Connor and Leon to support those guys, to allow teams to worry about other things other than just those two. Who's the glue guy in the room now? Everyone wants to talk about Connor or Leon or, some of the stars. Who's that guy in that locker room that's maybe been an addition or stepped up into the role that just is a real big piece of that locker room?
Yeah, we have a number of personalities in our locker room that I think contribute in different ways. Mike Smith, for once, he's a tremendous athlete at the age he is, the longevity, the success he's had in this league. He has a huge impact and influence on our team, and not just with his goalie position, throughout our locker room in every position, everyone's personality. But you mentioned Kenny made some additions here. Zach Hyman comes in and has been playing a tremendous, role for us so far this year and had great impact with our team success. And so that's been a huge addition. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has been off to a tremendous start. He's a tremendous hockey player, long time Oiler, obviously, as everyone knows. But you bring in a guy like Duncan Keith that's come in and helps solidify our back end, and the experience, knowledge that he's brought to our guys has been certainly evident so far early in this season. A guy like Warren Fogle comes in, or Derek Ryan, call it in a more supporting role, have been very useful for us, have been very effective for us. And so that was critical for our team to have more depth, more balance as we move forward. We brought some guys that really are competitive, that are hard to play against, that allows us to play with the puck more, which feeds into the strengths of our team. And certainly those two individuals, with Leon and Connor, when they have the puck, there's maybe no one better in the world with doing great things and positive things with the puck. And certainly when they're together is a whole nother a whole nother conversation. But so what Kenny's done in the offseason is it's allowed our team to have better balance and to be able to hopefully be extremely competitive in different types of games.
You mentioned Mike Smith there, and then the intangible of like how well liked he is amongst his teammates and sort of what role he serves in the locker room. That's often overlooked or potentially underappreciated by the press. I think probably because none of them have ever been in the locker room before, like to really get that. And I think that's one of the pieces that this analytics movement doesn't understand either. There's no number on that. What do you have to say about that? Because there was some criticism over the offseason that, like, why didn't you guys get a goalie? I mean, Mike Smith had a great year last year, but he is old. I mean, he's old for the league. Like, one, there's obviously a trust there that he can do the job, but how much does it matter that everyone loves this guy and he serves as a great example or whatever you would say in the locker room?
Yeah, I think there has to be a balance of all those things, like, and not just in Mike's case, but call it anybody's case of their value added, if you will. It just can't be in a number or a statistic, and it can't just be potentially just what is accomplished on the ice during their shift or during their time, and then whatever it would be. There's more to it than that, than as you know. You talk about the glue guy, the culture that you're trying to establish, a winning culture in this environment. You need those individuals that some people may not understand the value that he adds. And Mike certainly does that with this group, on and off the ice, no question.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one thing that I try and players of whatever age, if they would listen, is like there is like guys like yourself, guys like Tip, guys like Ken Holland. Like there's a value, of course, of what your hockey card says. Like people look at that. You can't deny that people look at that. But to play as long as somebody like Smith, to be around like a Derek Ryan, that who's there and who's being valuable and an asset, like you have to have the internals, right, that make you a desirable player in that room. And in my mind, like those are skills that can be worked on as well, right? Like how to be a good teammate. What does that look like? What do you need to get better at? And you talk about self-assessment. That's one of my major themes, is always like, where can you get better? You want to play this game for a long time, you're going to have to be a good teammate. People are going to want to go to bat for you, right?
No question. And you mentioned Derek Ryan. You mentioned, you could call, it's Mike Smith. It's Kyle Turris on our team, who's had a long career, successful career. There's a reason, Duncan Keith, there's a reason that these people or these guys play a long time and play at a high level a long time. And it's just not their physical ability in most cases.
Yeah, exactly. The physical ability is the one where everyone falls in love with, but it's those other things that I try and shine a light on a little bit, is like those things matter too. Derek Ryan's story for me, he was actually a podcast guest, and he was one of the, well, there's been quite a few now actually that I don't know at all, but I never met him before at all, but we had a connection from the Spokane Chiefs because we both played there. And I know the alma mater there in Michigan is kind of the same. You're part of a fraternity, right? When you play somewhere somebody else does. But are you familiar with his story of like him going to Canadian University and then to like some no-name league in the middle of Europe, and like now he's an NHLer? Like it's so phenomenal.
It's incredible. It really is. And not the biggest guy, not the fastest guy, not the purest goal scorer, but he brings an element to teams that are desirable for us. He's a right shot centerman that digs in on face-offs, that can kill penalties, that can match up against strong opponents. And so it's good to see those guys thrive and be successful. And specifically, you add in then the storyline of where he's come from at the U of A, then over to Europe for a number of years. And he was a tremendous player in Europe, and then back and getting his crack in the NHL, and has had a heck of a career in the NHL. he's just an all-around great individual.
Yeah.
And character matters, as you know.
Yeah.
And he's highly character.
That came through in spades too, like talking with him, right? Like just, I guess I was going to say he kind of has to be humble, but he doesn't actually. He could actually be a guy that's not humble for like how he got to where he got to, and now he's kind of sitting on top of the mountain in the National League, and fought every inch of the way to get there. But he is. You could. I mean, it was just easy to talk to. You could tell that he was methodical about getting better. He was. His progression was really cool to discuss. And I guess there's a storyline there too, because the relationship mattered for him as well, because his junior coach and Bill Peters was the guy who gave him the chance in Carolina. So it's like those happen, those parallels happen more often than not. And he got his chance, and then he earned his role, and then there he is. Maybe that's a good segue to go back to you, Wisey, I saw you got 3 games in Toronto, and no one will ever take those away from you. It's a real special club. I only had 41, but hey, we did play, right? We did play, and it was pretty cool to say that we did. But you were really, really, really successful at the second best level, and to only get 3 games, like to look back on that, it was just bad timing. Did you not get an opportunity? I'm sure you felt like you deserved an opportunity. I think you did. How about what was that for you in your career?
Yeah, it's there were some frustrating moments of maybe a couple years, 3 or 4 years into my pro career, after I think I've established myself in a positive way of doing some things in the right way for the teams I was on. But I don't look back with regret or anything like that. Hey, I wasn't the biggest player, and I wasn't the fastest player, and I get it. And it was a league that was big, and they were starting to get faster. Rules were a little different. People can say what they want. Maybe then I just wasn't good enough to be at that level and be really productive. Would I have liked a little more opportunity? Yeah, sure. I think we all would, right? But I don't look back on it and shoulda, woulda, coulda a whole lot. Did I maximize everything that I had? Maybe. I'm not sure. Could I have worked a little harder in the off season, do some different things to improve my self-assessment, have a different self-assessment, different approach on my game? I probably could have, no question. But in the end, I was happy with the way my playing career went, minus the injuries, because that had an effect on me. But as far as the ability, I hope I was a good teammate. I hope I worked hard. And I hope I contributed in a way to make other people around me better. And when hopefully it wasn't a huge headache for many of the coaches I had, maybe.
No, well, considering the history and where you are now, that obviously wasn't the case. But how did the training camps go for you? Like, were you successful in camps? Like, I don't mean to dig in on this there is players go through shitty stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and we have to find ways to keep going, even when it's maybe not what we want, right? Or maybe not what we think we deserve. Was there some camps where you're like, how the hell am I not still here? Or like, why is XYZ getting called and I'm not? Like, do you have any scenarios like that?
Yeah, I went to a couple camps in Toronto. And one, I had a good camp. The second one, not a good camp. Didn't even, at the end, I could have been the first string of cuts gone, for a number of reasons. But as I played, certainly in the year in St. John's, I had a good start to the year. I was strong throughout the balance of the year. I got called up just before Christmas time. And like I said, 3 games. But it's, was I meant in the right frame of mind mentally to take advantage of that opportunity, whether it was in camp or whether it was when I got called up? I don't know that. Whether it's self-confidence, the ability to feel I belonged, the ability to understand the moment. I probably wish I had a little bit better understanding of some of those things. But it is what it is at the end of the day for me. But yeah, so the training camp part, I felt prepared going into camps. Some went my way that I thought, okay, maybe get a couple exhibition game looks, which I did. But I thought that my play in the minors would allow me maybe some some different opportunities, some more opportunities, and it didn't, and that's fine. For what, and because I understand a little bit more now, encompassing of what goes through in these walls, in the discussions, and but looking back, Jace, like, I think I'm happy with the way the career for me went, playing wise. I met tremendous teammates and lifelong friendships. I'm glad we're able to reconnect. And so the game's provided me a whole lot, which I can't complain too much about.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
No, for sure. Same thing with me. I mean, like, of course there was stuff left on the table, I think, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think anyone maximizes for, completely. I try and teach accountability, right? And I really try and look back on my career with that accountability, but there is an element of opportunity as well, right? Like, is there an opportunity? Were you given the chance to stake your claim? And you mentioned,
sorry to interrupt, but before I lose, I reflect on I have two daughters, and one's 24, graduated in the workforce now, and one's a 10th grader, and she's a field hockey player, and a really good field hockey player, and I try to teach her this very similar things of, and maybe because it's part of my looking back at my career, that maybe I left a little bit on the table, the work ethic, the preparation, the sacrifice a few moments to see if I can improve in some different areas. I'm just trying to make her aware of some of that stuff and the discipline that's required to be the best you can be. And that's part of probably what I look back on my career, that I also tried to impose a little bit on, my daughter, and or certainly some of the young athletes I had at Michigan, of take advantage of opportunities, take advantage of resources. And if you do that, the path forward is fine. The path forward, you'll have no regrets for, and whatever that path is.
Yeah. One last break from the episode here with Brian, just to share how to work with me. I know a lot of families do reach out, either on an individual basis or coaches. That is what I do during the season, is work with teams to help them get better. I walk them through my Peak Potential Hockey Project, which is an amazing team builder. If you want to get an advantage on your competition, having all of your players take the program, and whether the coach himself takes the players through the coaching session or whether they use me to take the players through the coaching sessions, it is an invaluable tool to help reach goals and help to win some hockey games. There's also the ability to work with me personally through the Peak Performance Project on an individual basis. Those projects, the Peak Performance Project runs every 5 weeks. It's a 4-week course that runs every 5 weeks, and it is coached by me. There's a coaching call at the end of each week, and I get to work with players from all across North America for that particular session. So you can sign up there on my website, www.upmyhockey.com. The Peak Performance Project covers the 4 most important mindset areas of the game that I feel are being underutilized by players, and it's administered in a way that players find really fun and interactive. It's only lessons Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The lessons get made up of different of various videos. They're short to the point. I never keep the content to more than 20 minutes in a day. There is a little bit of action items, if you will say, that's assigned to some days in particular. But yeah, the content gets released Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So when you wake up in the morning, there's new content there. It's not an arduous, overwhelming process, but you are learning and you are encouraged to take action steps on the daily to evolve your mindset and your mental game and your approach to the game. So having such phenomenal success with that program that I'm really, really happy to market it and to talk about it, because I see the results players are getting and that the parents are seeing in the players, and how much more resilient they're becoming, how much more confident, how they're getting better results on the ice, and really at the end of the day, how much more empowered they feel, the players feel, and just taking ownership of their development and of their hockey dreams. So that's been a lot of fun. So the Peak Performance, Peak Potential Hockey Project is really how you can work with me. And again, it's contact is on my website, upmyhockey.com. Now back to the episode with Brian Wiseman. No, great point. Almost like resonates 100%. I hear the words of Brad Larson coming out, a past guest in the podcast, And that was really, you know, Lars probably as a
Yeah.
player, he can confidently say he did everything he could. You know, like that's just the way he approached it. You know,
Yeah.
he got more than he ever thought he would get, and he's proud of what he did. And obviously, he wears that same type of attitude as a coach now. You know, and prepares the same way, and has his players prepare the same way, which is cool to see, and see the success Columbus is having this year as an ex Pee Wee provincial champion. Brad was on my Pee Wee team in Vernon.
There you go. Good.
Yeah, that was good stuff. When you talked about being prepared for the moment, though, like when you were there, or I mean, getting called up. I don't know how old you were at the time, but I remember, you know, my first games was a 20-year-old rookie, and trying to manage that, you know, trying to manage everything about that, trying to manage the NHL guys you're now in the locker room with, trying to manage your own preparedness and your success on the ice, trying to manage being an NHL player socially and what that means. And I mean, there's a lot that happens, you know, for young men when they're in that scenario. I have nothing disparaging to say about anyone that was in a coaching role, because no one did anything wrong. But looking back now and what I'm doing, right, and maybe what you're doing, I think that maybe people could have done more to help with that transition, you know, like to help having me be comfortable or whatever. And again, no ownership on anyone else. Accountability is on me as a player back there. You had to do it. I'm not using that as an excuse at all. But do you find, because of your own experience and your own history, that maybe you're like taking that guy out for a cup of coffee, or just I don't know, like do you have a little different feeling for those guys who are maybe getting called up now, or young guys?
It is, no question. And I believe there has to be, from my experience as a player and into my brief coaching career at Michigan and now here in Edmonton, it's critical that you develop those relationships and to have those conversations. We were just talking with the other assistant coach yesterday. Ironically, he was talking about his own boy and hockey player, and some of the positive reinforcement and how positively that can affect going forward, and not BSing anybody. We're not here to do that. We have to be honest and truthful of somebody's game, but to give them the pat on the back, to give them the voice of confidence, to instill some of that confidence that they can then grab a hold of and build and magnify themselves, I think is ultimately critical, that you see coaches do much more of now than maybe previously. Not that they cared any less then and now. It was just a different approach, as we can all understand and appreciate. I think now you see more coaches having those conversations, those moments, those touch points, we'll call it, with these individuals, to hopefully make some positive impact and instill, you know, some good vibes and confidence moving forward. Because it is daunting getting called up for your first time in the NHL or at a training camp, your first NHL training camp, when the nerves are going and the anxieties up high, or whatever that the stresses you may be dealing with. Can we calm those a little bit? Is part of our role.
Yeah, I know, that's a great answer. I mean, that comfortability, right? I mean, you talked about being positive too. Like I use the term catch them when they're good. Like it's really easy to see the mistakes and want to correct the mistakes, or, you know, the inefficiencies. And I think that was kind of more in our time too, but I see it like I head coach younger athletes, right? And I totally see that difference at that level of like, catch them when they're good. Like the positive reinforcement can be such a great coaching moment for everybody as well, right? Like, look what just happened there. That was awesome. Like, that's what we want to have happen. And of course, the terminology used with some of these pros at your level would be different, but I think it's just as effective, right? If you're constantly showing mistakes and the videos about mistakes and how we made mistakes, like, you got to show some positive stuff too. And I find that a lot of teams are starting to do more of that.
It is. And it's incredible you mentioned that, because it's so important. You know, we need to point out some areas of improvement within the individual or team game, but we certainly have to recognize those positive things that are going on in the individual or our team's game. My coach, you know, at Michigan, Red Berenson, who I played for 4 years and I coached with for 6. A tremendous individual, brilliant coach. Would always talk about when I went back to coaching with him, but hey, grab so-and-so and look back at last week's and let's show him, 6, 8, 10 really good clips, when he's not feeling it. Or we have a goal scorer that's struggling. He's maybe gripping it and he's just fighting it a little bit. Hey, let's pull up his last 10 goals he scored. Let's show him some of those. Or maybe we got a big series against the same team and he scored 4 last year. Let's bring him in and show him if it's kind of goes in line with what we think he needs to do. It's powerful. It certainly is. And I think it's great that people are recognizing yourself and others, that the impact that those conversations, those moments can have in one's confidence. And this kind of brings us back to the original thing of confidence building. And there's lots of tools out there, but how to build one's confidence is part of our responsibility.
Yeah. Sometimes guys can get a bit high and get complacent, and sometimes they're too low and they need to pat in the back. And you're always managing that roller coaster for sure. We'll finish off here, Wisey. We're rolling up on an hour. If you don't mind, I got a parent group on Facebook from all across North America, 1,500 families. And sometimes before I interview a guest, I'll just ask, who I'm speaking with, if anyone has any questions. And there was 2 or 3 good ones here. So if you don't mind, we'll just ask some questions from the parent group. And they'll get to hear it on the podcast. So the first one's from Dan Kaufman. He says, how does the Oilers coaching staff share the workload of their team? I'm curious how the teams in the NHL parcel out the jobs and what those jobs are.
That's a good question. Great question. So our head coach kind of oversees everything that's going on. We have 3 assistant coaches, a goalie coach, a video coach. We have a big staff. So one of our assistant coaches takes care of the penalty kill, like a focus on our penalty kill and defense. One would have a focus on power play and our forward group. Myself, I have a focus on face-offs and primarily the forward group, and some of the younger guys that are coming up through the ranks would be probably an area of focus for me that I was brought in to do and some different things. We have our goalie guy, our video guys in charge of make sure all of the managing of the video and pre-scouts and everything's in line for our coaching staff. And our head coach kind of oversees it all and really monitors our 5-on-5 play and dives into statistic stuff, analytic stuff that I've dabbled into here as well. We have a very unique staff here in Edmonton, Jason. And I've only been on a few, and I don't have this long history of coaching. But I would hesitate to say there's not many more staffs out there that are more connected and respect and great respect for one another than what our group is. And not saying there's bad ones out there by any means. We have a very connected staff, and it starts with our leader, Dave Tippett. And you can mention Ken Holland in that breath of who put the staff together or helped comprise the staff. Again, we have our responsibilities. We all respect others' input. We have multiple eyes on different things that are going on in the game. And I'll go to to our assistant coach and ask him about, hey, you seen anything on faceoffs that maybe I'm overlooking? I'm not seeing it. And he'll do the same thing on power play, or PK does very similar things. So our head coach oversees everything. Obviously, he dives into lots of our individual play and or our overall team play. But there's many duties out there to make this thing work, and our coach delegates it, and he allows us to do our job, which is great.
That's cool. Yeah, I'll have one follow up on that. I know again 20 years ago that the head coach was in most scenarios relatively unapproachable, maybe be the right word. You could, but you probably weren't going through his door very often. There wasn't too many, like, I'm going to initiate this meeting. Of course, they would talk to you when they wanted to. But the assistant coaches were the guys that were playing cards at the back of the bus and, kind of working on stuff with the players and were more of that liaison maybe to the head coach. Is that still kind of the traditional role? Are you kind of more of the getting to know the players a little bit and trying to build those relationships?
Yeah, still in that process of building relationships with players, understanding what they need, understanding player A to player B, what their different needs might be or their personalities. Our head coach here, I always said that Tip was ahead of his time. he was quote unquote back in the day, the player's coach, whatever that term means to people. But what you said, he was approachable. It wasn't always a one way. You had to go see him. He was seeking out you for just conversation. How you doing? What's going on away from the rink? Different things to married guys with families, with the single guys with not. That was back in 1996, 97, 98, 99 when I was with him. In those years, as the head coach, that wasn't necessarily the norm for the head coach's role. But it's certainly appreciated, because I certainly appreciated as a young player back there that my coach developed a relationship, or wanted to develop a relationship. And then there was a sense of, yeah, he has my best interests at heart. He wants me to be the best I can be. I understand that. And little did they know, we had a lot of guys that went and played really hard for him.
Yeah. Well, it humanizes him, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what word to put on it, right? It's just a human that seems like he has a genuine interest in another human instead of just being a player, I don't know. I think that, to me, that's the next greatest evolution. And I think it's kind of happening before our eyes right now, but that focus on the person behind the player, that person behind the player, because there's things that make that person tick. There's things that he cares about. There's things that are going to, the more you know about them and the more you genuinely care about them as a person and not just an asset on the power play, I think you're going to get more out of that guy.
100%. It's a relationship-driven process that these guys just happen to be hockey players. And a former coach said that much more eloquently than I did. Todd McClellan, when I was at a camp of his, is, hey, we're in the relationship business, and getting to know these individuals to make sure that they care and there's a mutual trust. They just happen to play hockey.
Yeah, cool. No, I love it. Paul Parkinson's asks, I would ask him if he's concerned about where they place in the standings or if their focus is a deep playoff run. Also, how do you maintain focus through an 82-game schedule?
Good question. We certainly are mindful of the standings per se, because obviously there's thresholds throughout the season that is an indicator of where we stack up against others. Obviously we know how many teams make the playoffs, so there's a standings part. But our focus really here, and it comes from our coach, is, and you'll hear lots of coaches, it's just how are we playing? Like, where is our game at? Are we maximizing right now as best we can? Now, that may not, our maximum might not be the same now as it's going to be in January as it will be in March. But as the team is comprised right now of what we're going through, schedule, different things, are we maximizing? Are we playing the best to our ability? If the answer is yes, we just keep moving along. And with that, you hopefully through that process that you're getting the results that you want to. But certainly mindful of these standings. And we do talk about early now of playoff style hockey, because our goal is to make a long run in the Stanley Cup playoffs and hopefully to achieve the ultimate. And so we're mindful of that. We talk about it, but more it's about the day-to-day play and approach that builds to that time in the springtime. If that makes sense. The
building is the key word, and that is one that I'm not eloquent in speaking about, because as a player, I don't feel like I ever held something back per se, thinking, well, I'm going to need this in March or April. I know as a coaching staff, it's tough to put the reins on anybody, because really you don't want to, right? You want everyone, like you say, playing their best, and you want your team to be successful, but you do want to build, right? You want to be playing your best hockey at the right time of year, and you need to have stuff in the tank, and there needs to be somewhere else to get to, right? Because if you don't make that step, you're getting left behind. And how do you, is that something that is talked about, or how do you even navigate that?
Yeah, you're right. I think it just comes probably organically or naturally a little bit, through the processes we all go through. We talk about habits, playoff winning habits at critical times of the games, situation, scoreboard dictating some different things for us, right? that, yeah, you might be able to get away with it now, but when things get a little tighter in the second half in the playoff push, when things get really hard, much harder in the playoffs, those things matter. Yeah. Those moments, those details, those situations could have certainly a much more negative impact than it does now in November, in December. So that's kind of our approach, how we go about some of those things. Yeah.
I love it. I'm smiling on the inside. Well, now I'm going to announce it on the outside. But like, I've had those, like that same theme, that same conversation with my U13 team. Like, we had a good team. We had a really good team. And oftentimes we're up by quite a few goals. And it's easy in the last 5 minutes to maybe be careless or to do things, not really recognize the game, or to get like the habits you're talking about, or the standards is another word that I use. Like, what's our standard? Right. Like, what's our team standard here? And to talk about the good habits, because when it does matter, right? When it really matters and when it's on the line, you can't be, oh, I should do it now, right? Like, it doesn't work that way. You got to just have it ingrained in you. This is the way you do it. That's so right. To hear you say that at the NHL level, I'm going to play this clip from my team and just let them know that, hey, we're all trying to do it, and it actually makes sense. So maybe we should believe in it. So thanks for answering that.
That's good stuff. Good stuff.
I got the last one here. Taylor Wilson says, what would he say the key contributor for number 29 and number 97's progression on reaching the top one or two players in the league? Mindset, work ethic, off-ice combination, or all of it? And that's the question from Taylor Wilson.
Yeah, Taylor, I don't know if there's one specific answer to that. It would probably be a lot of what you put out there, all of it. Work ethic, mindset, commitment. They're highly motivated individuals, number one. They want to be the best. They're team guys. They're, that want to win and do what it takes to win. And they're ever evolving their game on and off the ice, how they can impact others, understanding they're maturing, and not in a negative way, like they're immature. They're maturing as they go on. They're 24, 25 years old. They're maturing. Their game's maturing. Their impact within our locker room is developing over the short time that I've been here. It's impressive to see. And, we go back to Leon was the Hart Trophy winner a year ago, and Connor 2 years ago, or vice versa, I guess it was, right? They're very motivated individuals. I talked about intrinsic competitors. They are, but tremendous respect for one another, and respect for what the other individual does amongst our team and the contributions they make. And so, as you know, most teams, winning teams, they have a combination of some pretty good hockey players, and we're fortunate to have two of the best here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a part of the Oilers news feed on a regular basis, but from what I do get out of Edmonton and how they cover, like how the press covers McDavid and Draisaitl, I don't feel, well, one, I mean, Draisaitl was 4th overall. McDavid was supposed to be like the next coming of Christ, right? I mean, like that's, everyone thought that he was going to do that, and he's fulfilled that role. Draisaitl wasn't as heralded, obviously a very highly skilled player to go 4th overall. But I don't think anyone expected him to be winning Hart trophies and 20 goals in 20 games type of guy. So I think his evolution is really interesting. But what I wanted to talk about, or maybe ask you about, is that dynamic, because we're talking about world-class competitors who, yes, they want to win, but they also want to be the best, yet they're on the same team. You know what I mean? Like that could be really cancerous. I mean, it could be, but it seems like it's not. So like, how is that relationship with them, and how do they go about their business, having the relationship and being so good at what they do?
Yeah, I believe it starts with respect for one another, what one another brings to the table, right? They have a great relationship from all my understanding with each other, away from the rink, friends, hang out. But they enjoy each other. They get motivated and competitive against each other. You see it in practice and in games. You put the two together on a line, and it's nice to see some of the stuff that they do together. They're special. They're special hockey players, but they're special people, and And I'm fortunate that I'm a part of this, learning from them 100%, and learning a ton from those guys as well as others on our team. But to be able to see this day in, day out with these two is pretty unique perspective. And it's I'm certainly fortunate.
Yeah, super special. I mean, really, to be able to go in every day and be around two of the best in the world is cool. And yeah, talk about chemistry. You talked about Ollie and yourself, and I mean, you can elevate. Players can elevate each other, of course, right? You get more. Some players get more of each other, and just Connor's game compared to Leon's just seems so complementary, right? Leon slows it down. He's slow, products a big body, sees the iso, while Connor's so fast and dynamic. I could imagine trying to match up playing against you guys. That'd be super hard. So it's a good problem for you guys. Well, it's not a problem for you guys. It's a great advantage for you guys to have. And now you have those other pieces in place. And you mentioned earlier, I mean, I think it seems like the culture is there. You talked about what you feel in the coaching room there. I know Ken Holland from my experience with the Red Wings, my brief experience with the Red Wings, and from him personally. But that feeling in Detroit when I was there was unlike any other NHL organization that I went to. Of course, they were good, but the people that were there were good people, from top to bottom. And it started with Ken. He was approachable. He's a human. You talk about ego. There's no ego there. He just wants to do a good job. Sounds like Tip's the exact same way. Now he's brought in someone like him, and you have these two obviously huge pieces of the puzzle, and Connor and Leon and all these other supporting pieces that it just really looks like there's something special happening there. And as we all know, there's a lot of special things happening in other places in the league too. So it's a hard trophy to win, but you guys are well on your way, and I think you guys are growing, and what a great spot to be in.
It certainly is. And it's been a great experience for me for the last 2.5 years. Fortunate that Tip brought me along, and to be around this group of coaches and this group of players has been tremendous.
Yeah,
no
Edmonton enjoys a good long playoff run. They're due for one.
Right.
So we've fun to see some good Canadian teams, this year too. Calgary's looking good as well. It should be a fun playoff. So, Wisey, we're just over an hour. I apologize for going over the hour, but it just seems to happen. We can kind of start chatting all day, but I know you're a busy man. Your phone's ringing there, so we'll cut her short. Much gratitude. Thank you so much for coming out, and I really appreciate the conversation.
No, thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out, Jay. And it was good to see you and reconnect after all these years. Stay in touch.
Definitely, buddy. Well, thank you so much for sticking around to the end. That was a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed reconnecting with Brian. Brian, if you're listening, thank you so much for spending your time. I know how busy these hockey people are. They're at the rink all the time, and there's always something to do. So for Brian to take an hour out of his day to share some of his knowledge and experience with us, much gratitude, very appreciated. And I know there was a lot of stuff in there. Love hearing about Connor's commitment. We always just automatically assume that when we see a person of that level, of that status, in whatever they do, Connor obviously being the best hockey player in the world at this moment in time, we just think that they're better. We just think that they have a higher level of skill than anyone else, and that's why they're there. Now, in Connor's case, some of that is probably true. I mean, he was heralded from a young age that he was going to be the next best thing, and he's living up to those expectations. But the thing about being the best is that whenever you talk about somebody or you hear about someone that is at the top level of their game, they have world-class standards as well, and world-class commitment to their craft. And a lot of us don't line up that way. When we get good at something, we take our foot off the gas. We don't keep continually trying to find ways to get better. We don't continually push. We don't continually strive. So for someone to listen to someone like Connor, that not only is he ultimately skilled and he's an elite performer, but he is also tenacious at his development. He's curious about how to get better. He's willing to invest in himself to improve at a status when a lot of people just wouldn't even know they have room to improve. He's the best player in the world, yet he's trying to get better. So if there's one lesson you can take away from this podcast, it's like, what are you doing today? What have you done today as a player to step into that goal or to step into that dream that you may have? You might not be getting the ice time you want right now. You might not be where you want to be. The easiest question to answer is, am I getting better? Am I getting better? Am I deserving that power play time? What am I doing in my spare time to get on the line I want to be on, or to play on the team I want to be on? And obviously Connor's an example of that. If he can be working on his face-offs in the off-season, and if he can be working on his one-timer in the off-season to try and just incrementally increase facets of his game that are going to allow him an opportunity to really cement his status as one of the best players of all time, and to also help his team win hockey games, I think that all of you out there listening can probably step up your game and become more accountable to your development. So be curious, be focused, be passionate. This game is amazing that we have the opportunity to play and make the most of it. Leave it all out on the ice, and that means that you're aligning with your thoughts, with your habits, with your goals, and when we do that, we're doing things right. So as always, thanks for listening, and play hard. Keep your head up.